Okay, good afternoon, conference. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Yulia Zozulya, and she's going to talk to us about, from QA to UX, learning how to accommodate developers, and there'll be a chance for 5 minutes of questions at the end of this. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hello everybody, my name is Yulia Zozulya and I work at JetBrains. In JetBrains we make a lot of stuff, from team tools for continuous integration server, bug tracker, even code review tools, to various IDEs which help you to code better and faster based on IntelliJ platform. And probably you've heard about PyCharm. This is the one for Python. And today I want to talk to you about how we make our tools, what we've learned about you, and how programmers' qualities can be beneficial and not so much, how can we explain them and not so much. And of course, all this generalization may not be applicable to each one of you, but I hope that you will find similarities and maybe learn something new. So how come that I now try to make it easier for you? I started in JetBrains as quality assurance engineer, testing PyCharm and discovering the strangest thing people can ever do about it. And more importantly, the strangest things, how it can be implemented and how can you achieve the goals that you're having in front of you. So I was facing some of PyCharm's shortcomings every single day. For example, I was creating a lot of small test projects, and the dialog for it wasn't really good. It changed layout, it was jumpy, and more importantly, you didn't see the type of projects that are available, so you couldn't decide if it's the project you are looking for supported or not from the first glance. So during redesign, we gradually updated it to the current state, from the jumpy layout to the nice view with the simple one page, and it looks great. And more importantly, you can see all the types of projects there. And as a result, other small IDEs based on our platform actually adopted it. And main platform also wanted to, but their project's so complicated to begin with, but they couldn't, so they couldn't. And another problem was from settings. I had to reconfigure project Python interpreter all the time, and the dialog settings page for it was so heavy and unintuitive that it always stressed me a little bit. See at this table over there, do you think that what the selection does? It actually configures the interpreter, not only shows you the details of it, but when you change the selection, you actually change the interpreter for your project. So after redesign, we changed not only the look of it, but the behavior. Project interpreters are now auto-discovered on the system, so you don't have to configure them manually anymore. We got rid of this awful table with simple and nice combo box, and we actually removed some part of this heavy dialog because no one actually used it, and it doesn't look so cluttered anymore. And those examples actually encouraged me to influence something from the very beginning when all is starting. I'm sure you know all about redoing stuff when you see some legacy code which needs to be rewritten, but with UI it's actually not the price of rewriting it, but also the price that users actually get used to it, even if it's bad. So starting something from the very beginning is always exciting. And this nice thing was thread concurrency visualization, which shows you the real-time states of threads in Python process. And with great girl Lisa, we actually did pretty good new part of PyCharm, and we received a lot of good feedback from you. And our major platform actually wanted some part of this for Java as well. So that's how I realized I've become more of a user experience specialist rather than quality assurance engineer, and it was just a matter of a bit of time till I joined the UI team. So, what first comes to mind when you think about making life for developers easier? It's to make everything keyboard-centric. And studies shows that using keyboards actually makes you really productive. I don't mean just your typing speed, but this too, of course, but the time when you try to deal with shortcuts, which allows you to invoke actions faster and navigate through them easier. So actually, OS vendors also think about keyboard-centric approach. For example, Mac users may know about this bright blue button in every dialog. It's actually called default button, and you can invoke it with Enter regardless of where your focus right now is in the dialog. And as to Windows, there is many of you who use Windows probably have seen those controls with underlined letters. Those are actually called mnemonics, and you can change the state of control or grab focus with the Alt key modifier. So in JetBrains, we thought both those ideas are great, so we combine them in our dialogues, because when you see a complicated dialogue like this, for example, this is commit changes in our project, you need all the help you can get. As to shortcuts and invoking actions easier, I think it says a lot that the most used shortcuts in our platform is the one which allows you to learn the new ones. It's a find action, which allows you, of course, find actions and shows its shortcut. And I honestly think that that's just like one of the most useful actions there. Another great quality of developers is that you do really like to tweak things around. There are so many settings in tools which are used by developers that even my colleagues, which do things for developers, do not actually know what can be changed and where. So only in default PyCharm installation, there are 172 setting pages with about 30 controls per page. And a lot of the stuff can be tweaked in place. For example, you can change the view or filtering of the panels and tool windows, and you can invoke dialog per scope. And this great amount of settings actually allows you to change practically everything from behavior to looks. And of course, we get a lot of options requests on how to tweak even more. And many times it seems that adding an option is quite a simple and obvious solution, but more often than not, we don't need an option. We just need a better solution. For example, there is a problem that sometimes you have inversion files in your working directory, and you forget to commit them, actually to edit commit them. So you ask to show them in the commit dialog. But it's not always that you commit those inversion files, and they can just clutter interface, so you request an option to remove them from there. But the better solution would maybe different. Maybe we could just show you only the new inversion files in this dialog, and so you won't forget them, and you won't actually be bothered by the inversion files which have been there for a long time, and you just leave them at that. And another story would be about line numbers options. And as all human beings, we have our habits, and sometimes we get used to something that it's not really actually our habit, but the way of things that are the way of things that are there in the field. So it's not actually our habit, but some way of life which was always there. This is about line numbers in different text editors. They came from the time when this was the only way to address specific place in code. But they do take quite a lot of valuable space on your screen, and there are better ways to navigate now. For example, smart navigate tools such as find symbol in your IDE, or you can click on traceback while debugging. It's almost everywhere right now. But statistics show that you don't actually care. When we switch them on by default, only 2% of you switch them off. So they don't bother you. And when we switch them off by default, more than half of you switch them back. So it shows that you miss them. You just get used to them. And maybe it's the simplest solution with an options at best, after all. But in the end, all those settings are useful. And I want you to show this by example of research which was done in mid-50s by American Air Force. They were updating cockpits in their aircraft to make it due to massive amount of accidents happening back then. They decided that after measuring all the pilots, they could bring out some kind of average pilot. And since all the pilots were pre-selected back then for the job, for example, you couldn't be a pilot if you're too high. Each pilot wouldn't be very different from this average pilot. This cockpit was designed this way before, and they decided that this average somehow changed, and after updating it, they will solve all the problems with it. But one young researcher came in. He's called Gilbert Daniels, and he joined the program and decided to prove them wrong. He actually decided to check how many pilots were average. They measured quite a lot of stuff, actually, from height to chest girth and arm lengths. So what about your guesses? How many pilots from 3,000 of pilots measured were actually average? Not a single one of them. As to being average, for example, by 3 parameters, only 3% of those pilots actually were average by 3 parameters. So they gave up this idea of average pilot. And they started to design adaptive controls which are available now in practically every car. You can adjust your seat, you can change the position of your steering wheel, and that's because when you are doing something important, you need all your concentration and not be distracted by some things that are not comfortable for you. It doesn't mean that you don't have to have smart defaults which are suitable for the majority, but you need to remember that possibility of configuration is very important. But enough with the settings. It seems that developers do like to be nostalgic and traditional with all these new technologies constantly surrounding them, and they like the looks and behavior of terminals and terminal-like interfaces from the times when the screens were black and text-oriented. So we were facing the same problem as all websites in Europe, complying with this strange cookie law, which requires you to show cookie warning. So every site practically uses cookies now, and everyone shows that cookie warning. But we remembered this action of yours, and we actually implemented some kind of small command line tool in there, so you can invoke couples of commands, and we received pretty good feedback from that. Yeah, and those terminals are probably the reason why all the developers like dark backgrounds, because it doesn't make any sense, since no research actually shows that dark themes are better for your eyes, or disproves it, or proves it. That is why it's quite strange that almost 30% of our developers configure their editors to our dark theme. There was a research back then when screens were dark. It was meant to persuade manufacturers to build up new monitors and graphic adapters. They proved that you understand text better when it's written black and white rather than written white and black. And it's probably also a habit because we have our books like that for centuries. And the reason for that is that ink is expensive and the paper is white anyway. But still, the research is there and you understand black and white text better. But it seems that we don't actually read code in our IDEs. We scan it for anchors, for example, keywords and stuff like that. And it seems that dark background allows you to concentrate on different colors better because dark background itself doesn't reflect light, so you can concentrate on the stuff which actually reflects it. As to this, we have quite a new trendy thing going on in editors. This is called semantic highlighting. I'm sure you all know about syntax highlighting, when all the obvious stuff is highlighted, for example, keywords. But in this approach, in this approach, each variable and each parameter gets its own color, and it helps you to catch simple errors, for example, referencing the wrong variable or typos and even more. Please check this out. I'm sure it's available in every editor, not in every editor, but in many editors right now. Yeah. This is about it. I was rather quick, so I have some time for comments and questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Yulia. If you would like to ask a question, we have about 5 minutes. Please form a queue behind me. So I have a question to kick off with. That was a great talk. I really enjoyed. I think you've won GIF of the conference with the pussycat getting the mouse. That was very funny. What tools do you use to study the way developers work?
Mainly Photoshop, but yeah. Yeah, basically that's it. There are tools for prototyping, for example. Azure has a lot of tools for that, but I think that Notepad and Photoshop is the better solution.
Okay.
Or didn't I understand the question?
I think what I was asking was what tools do you use to study the way developers work? So, for example, you obviously have statistics about how people use your editor
easy.
and that sort of thing. How do you do it?
It's quite easy for us because all my colleagues are developers actually, so I come to them and ask the question. And of course we have statistics. We measure how users use our products, and you have a little pop-up questions in every our product, whether you want to or not to send statistics. So, yeah.
Fantastic, thank you.
So, firstly, thank you. I use PyCharm every day, but I'm working on a system for developers. Doesn't actually have a user interface, but we have lots of settings. And I think your point about the no average pilot was very good. That's helped me to understand that providing lots of settings is probably a very good thing. So my question is, do you have any sort of frameworks or methodologies that you can recommend to me, maybe I can go away and look at, for how to maybe structure settings files, or if you see what I'm saying, so that I can make it very easy for my users to quickly find and change the settings that they need?
We actually have search in our settings, so you can search for settings as in Mac settings group. And we recently redid how we group our settings. For that we had some kind of research where we asked our developers what they think about each group of setting, where it belonged to. So yeah, that's probably it. You must have search in your settings if you have a lot of them, and probably grouping by sense would work.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello. I suffer from RSI issues a little bit. I'm sure other people probably suffer more than I do because it's very, very minor in my respect. What sort of research have you done into sort of reducing the amount of keystrokes people have to make in order to perform certain actions, or sort of what sort of analysis have you done in saying, well, someone's typing this, and this to do this effect? What can we do to suggest this option instead to get them to do that faster?
What sort of research we had? I think the main research is statistics that we have, how many people invoke how many actions, and we constantly analyze it, and yeah, actually we've come to a problem right now that we don't have enough letters on keyboard to have all the shortcuts we need. So we are now analyze statistics on how often one use action to actually give it a shortcut. Yeah, that's probably it. We use statistics a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for a really interesting talk. So if developers are setting their settings very tailored to their own preferences, how do things work out when they're collaborating, trying to work together to solve a bug or pair programming or whatever?
Sorry, could you please repeat, because I
yeah, sure. So if you've got very tailored settings to suit one person, how do things work out when two people are working together?
Oh.
Does it throw the person whose settings they aren't?
No, I don't quite get it, sorry. Because we have settings that can be shared. You can commit settings within your project, or so you get the settings from your colleague through the version control system, and they just quite picked up by our product.
Okay, yeah, so shared settings would be...
answer your question?
Would answer my question, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I have one final question. Vim or Emacs?
I would say Vim. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Please give Yulia a round of applause for such an excellent presentation. Thank you.